We're going to change things just a little bit here. I'd like to introduce a special guest of ours here. And she's going to do two parts. She's going to speak about We the People. She started it. It's a PAC. And also, she ran for the U.S. representative for the 2nd Congressional District back in 2010. And when she gets done talking about We the People, she'll introduce our next guest. Jennifer Horn, everybody.
Thank you so much. You know, I got to tell you, I'm thrilled to see on this chilly, rainy day such a great turnout of Republicans. It encourages me that everyone's engaged. It is so important. I just very quickly want to introduce you to my new organization. It's a 501c4. It's a nonpartisan organization called We the People. And our mission statement is to preserve and promote the founding principles of freedom, limited government, and unlimited opportunity. Some of you attended our first event that we had about 6 weeks ago, our first in the nation Freedom Forum, with several presidential candidates and Senator DeVint and Congressman King. It was a huge success. We're thrilled at the response that we've had. And I want to just invite you to visit us online and share your information with us so we can keep you updated on future events. We are at wethepeoplefreedomforum.org. wethepeoplefreedomforum.org. There has never been a time in my lifetime when it has been more important for citizens of this great nation to be engaged in the political process, to retake your authority in the democratic process, to make sure that your voices are heard. One of our missions in this organization is to grow citizen engagement in the democratic process. So I'm just thrilled to see so many of you here today. And I just want to remind you, as Republicans, as Granite Staters, as parents and business owners and veterans and all the different things that define us as we go through our daily lives, it is so important that you recognize that the future of our nation does not lie in the hands of candidates or elected representatives or anybody else. The future of our country is in your hands. It is up to you to make sure that we get our nation back on track, that we elect a strong, principled, conservative leader in 2012. It is up to you to make sure that we fight every single day for those founding principles of freedom and limited government that so many of our sons and daughters have not only fought but given their lives to protect and defend on our behalf. So I'm just so pleased, wherever John is, thank you for the opportunity to be able to share this. And very quickly, we've been talking a lot of politics today. I just want to take a second and remind everybody that we are at the Hillsborough County GOP Flag Day picnic. And if you could join me and take a moment to thank the millions who, through the generations, have fought and died to protect and preserve what our flag stands for. Remember what this is all about. If we have any veterans in the room today, I'd love you to raise your hand and stand up. And everybody, please just join me in thanking them for their service. On behalf of my children, I thank you for what you have done for our great nation. I am honored to have the opportunity to introduce our next guest to you. We are living in times where there are folks in Washington who wake up every single day with new and exciting ways to show us how to fail, to show us how to spend more, how to tax more, how to grow government more. It is so important that we elect a leader who is going to bring strong, fiscally conservative, principled leadership to Washington. And when I look at the record of our next speaker, I am so impressed at what he was able to accomplish as a conservative Republican in a very democratic state. He has a record of success on the issues that we face at a national level today. Able to pension reform, healthcare reform, cutting spending and cutting taxes, and cutting the size of government, and managing to do it without anybody going over the cliff. It is a great pleasure to be able to introduce our next speaker today, Governor Tim Pawlenty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Or, as President Obama would say, you're welcome. I'm delighted to be with you. Thanks for the invitation to come by. I'm Tim Pawlenty, and I'm running. You want me to be back here?
They do.
Who's they?
Come on, Thank you.
Sorry. I guess I got to go back here.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. I'm running for president because the United States of America is facing great challenges. I've got the experience and the record and the results to get this country back on track. This flag represents the greatest nation the world has ever known. It is the most successful, most prosperous nation in this world, not because of our government, not because of our bureaucracy, but because of the values and strength and courage and vision of our people. And this country will continue to be a great nation, but in order for that to happen, we need a president who views America as exceptional, who views America's role in the world as leading the world, economically and otherwise. And that's not what we have right now. In 2012, this nation is going to be able to make a choice about where we head next as a country. We have a president now who's presiding over $4 a gallon or nearly so gasoline, crushing levels of unemployment, a federal government that is out of control. He made a series of major promises to the people of this country, and he's broken just about every one of them or not fulfilled them. Let me give you a couple of examples. Just a few months after he got sworn into office as President of the United States, he stood before the American people and he said, if you work with me and you do what I ask you to do, I'll cut the deficit in half during my first term as president. He didn't cut it in half, he tripled it or more. When he was running for President of the United States, he said, of course we need to address the healthcare crisis in America. But he was opposed to the individual mandate. He said he'd work with Republicans and do it on a bipartisan basis. He would focus on cost containment. And then he went to Washington, D.C. and did just the opposite. And then he was a senator and he was talking about raising the debt ceiling, one of the other issues that's before the nation right now. And he said, don't raise the debt ceiling. It would be an example of failed leadership. And now he's become the chief champion of raising the debt ceiling in this country. And the list goes on and on and on. We need a president that's going to lead this country, not as he says from behind, or his staff says as leadership from behind, but we need a president who's going to go out and lead this great nation to a better, brighter future. I'm not a declinist or somebody who's a defeatist or somebody who's going to accept an anemic level of growth. This president has basically said America is one of equals around the world. We're not the same as Portugal. We're not the same as Argentina. We've got an exceptional role around the world, economically and otherwise. And we need to make sure that we focus on those things that made this nation great and will continue to make it great. And let me give you just a couple of examples, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. We can't be a great world-leading country unless we've got an economy that's growing and growing not just at an anemic level or an average level, but is growing rapidly. It's providing jobs and economic opportunity for our citizens in New Hampshire, Minnesota, and all across this great nation. Earlier this week, last week, I unveiled an economic proposal that said, I'm not going to accept just average growth going forward. Let's set a big goal. Let's set an aspirational goal of not 2% or so GDP growth, but let's have our economy grow at 5% or so. And then let's talk about the things that it's going to take to unleash the private market, not the government economy in this country. President Obama believes that in order to grow the economy, you've got to grow government. I believe we grow the private economy by shrinking government. And that starts with having a tax code. That's a pro-growth, pro-investment, pro-jobs tax code. So I called for reducing the business tax burdens in this country. I called for condensing and reducing individual taxes in this country. I called for reducing tax burdens on investment, capital gains, and dividends and the like. I called also for reducing spending dramatically in this country, including a constitutional amendment to balance the budget. And we need that. Now, as we go forward, if you look at this country, we're not going to have people who are just talking about these things. We have to have leaders who can actually do them and have them. The truth of the matter is just about every Republican candidate is going to come through a room like this in New Hampshire and tell you many of the same things. The words are going to sound pretty similar. Maybe you've heard some of them already today. They're all going to say, look, I'm for reducing taxes. I'm for reducing spending. I'm for pro-growth economic policies. I'm for school accountability and school choice. I'm for market-based and not government-based healthcare reform. I'm for being tough on terrorism, being strong on security and defense issues. And I'm pro-life and I'm pro-traditional marriage and the like. So the issue here isn't going to be the Republican candidates say the right things. Most of them will say the right things. The real question for the good people of New Hampshire, as they play such a pivotal role in selecting who the next President of the United States is going to be, is who can actually do it. Who is this person, and can we trust them that their words and their deeds will line up? Do they have the fortitude to actually do this under difficult circumstances? Is this somebody whose words and deeds match up in their life? Have they run something? Have they managed and led a large organization in difficult circumstances, confronted crisis or challenge and overcome it? And do they have a record not just of giving a speech or offering a failed amendment in Congress, but do they have a record of getting these kinds of things done? Well, as you know, I was governor of the state of Minnesota for 8 years. And some of the things we did there was to cut taxes over 8 years net, even though we had 2 recessions during my time as governor. We also cut spending to some of the historic lows that the state's ever seen, including the last 2 years that I was governor. We cut the state spending below zero. In other words, took it down in real terms for the first time in a 150-year history of my state. We had one of the first states in the country to offer performance pay rather than just seniority pay for teachers statewide. Before it was cool and popular, we did public employee pension and benefit reform and got that on a path to being sustainable and more in line with the private sector in my state. And we did tort reform and welfare reform and so much else. Not just talking about it, but getting it done. Now, this didn't happen in a place where it's easy. If you think of Minnesota in your parlance, it would be like being a conservative governor in Vermont. Think about that. So in my state, I love my state. It's filled with really wonderful people. And like your state, it's a beautiful state in terms of the topography and the beauty of the state. But it's the land of Hubert Humphrey, and Walter Mondale, and Paul Wellstone, and Eugene McCarthy, and Jesse Ventura, and now United States Senator Al Franken. And if you can do these things in Minnesota that I've just described in a very difficult environment, we can do it anywhere, but it wasn't easy. We had the first government shutdown in a 150-year history of my state when I was governor over tax and spending matters. I set a record for vetoes in Minnesota to force financial discipline and to stop tax increases and to making sure spending was reduced and brought under control. I used executive powers to take more spending out of the budgets in my 8 years as governor than all the other 142 years worth of governors combined. So it's a record that I'll put up against anybody's in the country, and the Cato Institute gave my record as governor an A. And there's only 3 other governors in the country that got an A from the Cato Institute over the last 2 years. The other 3 aren't running for president. And so I feel good about what I accomplished in Minnesota. So we need to restore America. We need to get this country back on track, but that's going to require a president who believes in a positive vision for America, who's not going to lead from behind, who's going to actually put real solutions to real problems on the table, and not wait for somebody else to do it. That's what I did as the governor of the state of Minnesota. That's what I'll do as president of the United States. I want to just close and tell you that the way forward may not be easy, but it's not complex. We can look back at the history of this country, and we can see that the founding fathers gave us the roadmap for this country, what our values should be, what our compass setting should be, what the limitations of government should be. Then we can look back at the chapters of success in this nation and harvest the things that work for us, bring them forward to the challenges and issues of our time. And those answers do not reside in more government, building up more spending in Washington, building up more bureaucracies, having top-down command and control systems. They reside in unleashing the individual spirit and dreaming and designing and invention and innovation and hard work and industriousness of the American people and the goodness of the American people. And as we allow government to have gotten out of control at all levels, it not only has grown budgets, but it's discouraged the American spirit. It's that positive, can-do American spirit that we've got to get back. The tone has to be set by our leaders. The goals have to be set by our leaders. And that leader needs to be able to rally the team to make sure that we don't just talk about it, but we get it done. That's the kind of leadership I'll bring forward. I hope you'll join our campaign. Thank you for listening. I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. I do have one question. There's a few more we'll get to. A couple weeks ago, the unemployment came out. The rate, it was almost 9.2. And our president, currently today, hopefully he's going to be replaced in 12, said a little more time. That's what I need, is a little bit more time. How much more time should we give?
None.
Thank you.
We've tried it President Obama's way. His ways don't work. He doesn't have an economic plan. All he has is a campaign plan. And when you look at his solutions, which is to use government, to use debt, spending, to try to get the economy stimulated in his terms, it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked throughout history. It's not going to work now. It's not working now. So we tried it his way. It didn't work. The gig is up for President Obama. American people need jobs. They need this economy to get going. And for most people, their main pathway to whether they're going to have an opportunity in this economy is whether they have a job. And we need to do those things that will make it more likely that businesses are going to start and grow and provide jobs. And when you talk to job providers all across this country, as I do every day, they all say the same thing when you ask them, what can we do to make it more likely that you'll grow jobs and grow them quickly? They all say basically the same thing. Get the government off my back. Now some talk about taxes, some talk about regulation, some talk about permitting, some talk about the burdens that the government's put on the energy costs and driving up energy costs. Others talk about other frustrations they have with government. But to a person, they all say the government has made it too discouraging, too difficult, too expensive, too slow, and they are doing things to discourage or stop my progress in terms of job growth in this country. We need to hear that. It's common sense. We need to lighten their load, not increase their load. We've got to get our spending under control. You know, as we sit here, know that the federal government spends in debt about $40,000 a second. In the hour or so that we may be together here this afternoon, that's about $144 million of debt that will accumulate just in the time that I'm here with you today. For every dollar they spend, about 40 cents of it at their current spending rate is debt. They take in about $2.2 trillion a year and spend about $3.7 trillion. I mean, it is out of control. It is reckless. People say, well, how can you fix it? Well, I fixed it in Minnesota by drawing lines in the sand and then backing it up and taking the spending in my state from ridiculous levels down to something that was sustainable and, like I said, for the first time cut spending in real terms in 150 years.
Fred, and then I'll get to you, and that'll be the last question.
Fred Plett, Assistant Chair, Hillsborough County Republican Committee. You mentioned government burdens on energy. Tell me about cap and trade, what your current thinking is on cap and trade.
Well, I think like most of the other candidates in the race, I looked at, flirted with cap and trade, but I've just come out and said it was a mistake. And it would be the wrong thing to do. It would wreck the economy, it would put burdens on the economy, plus it's based on a flawed premise. So the other side wants to use their concerns about climate change to have government take over another big chunk of the economy in the form of energy policy, to put burdens and costs on it through the form of cap and trade. And a few years ago, not just in the context of this campaign, I said that's a wrong idea, it's a bad idea, don't do it. And so like all the other candidates, I got a few clunkers in my closet, in my record, I just admit it. That's the one that I'll tell you I just made a mistake and I've admitted it.
Only in New Hampshire can you have your heat on and your air conditioning on the same day. That's true climate change.
That's right.
We'll grab one more question.
Governor, as President of the United States, would you appoint an Attorney General along with yourself that will vigorously enforce the oath of office that you take to implement and see to it that all of the laws of our nation are carried out, to wit, DOMA? And how would you do it? Thank you.
Was your last part of the question relating to DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act?
Yes.
Well, the first part of the gentleman's question related to what I appointed Attorney General that would uphold the oath of office and uphold the Constitution. Absolutely. It would be one of the most important criteria in selecting that person. And they would also, in my view, and through my direction, do everything they could to protect and defend and define marriage in this country as between a man and a woman. I'm a strong supporter of traditional marriage, and that's the way it should be.
Thank you, Governor Pawlenty.